Okay, so do you want to introduce it, or should I do it, or?
For the show, you go.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Jessica, for setting this up. So this is session 4 in our Design Your Life, Have a Better Year in 2022 program. And so what I wanted to ask you, since you are the shall I say, the participant or the person who's going through the program, right? To help other people, get a handle on what it's about. So, what I was going to ask you today is, what have you noticed? What positive shifts have you noticed since we started this on the 1st of January? This is now 4 weeks in. So, yeah. So, what have you noticed?
I think, well, for starters, my thinking has changed. My thinking of what's possible for myself has changed dramatically. Like I used to feel a lot of resistance when I was thinking about my big dreams and whatnot. And I started to become really aware of the resistance, and I would hear it, but yet I didn't quite know how to shift it. That was what was missing. Because I was aware of it, I knew it was there, but I didn't know what to do with it. It was like, I'm stuck with this resistance. Whereas now I feel like I do know what to do with it because I know to ask it better questions. I know to spend the time thinking about what do I want as opposed to what I don't want, and focusing on the resistance. Now I know how to flip it to ask it better questions. And so one of the things that you asked me this week was, well, what do you want more of? And so I started writing down the things that I want more of. And I kind of did it more as my feelings, more not the things that I want, but more what I want to feel. And I was it was like, it was really hard to put it into words at first, but I did eventually come up with some really good words. And then what I'm starting to find now is opportunities. Like I'm seeing opportunities. I'm hearing things that I don't think I was paying attention to before, are really starting to come into my awareness. And so I was just mentioning a few minutes ago that something really big just landed in my lap that I didn't go seeking for. It found me. And so it's these kind of things that are starting to show up. More and more people are coming into my life, like yourself. This whole thing started in a very similar fashion, right? I was already thinking that for 2022, I need to take this farther. I get it. I get the theory, I get the logic of how this all works, but I was reading your book, but I wasn't studying your book. I was just passively listening, thinking somehow that was going to make a difference. And I mean, maybe it did to the degree that it brought you to me, but then we had to go beyond that. Now I'm a student of your teaching as opposed to just a listener, right? So yeah, it's like I feel. Oh, and I've started exercising again, and I freaking like it. This is this is new for me. I ended up seeing an opportunity to buy this Body Groove course that I love because I love to dance. It was half price, and so I jumped on it, and I've created a space in my house now, and I get up early in the morning and I body groove before I go to work, and all these things that I've been kind of wanting for a long time, but yet for some reason just kept hitting walls. The walls seem to be just coming down. So I don't. You can explain that for me.
So has the way you look at yourself changed?
Yeah, I already look at myself and feel like I'm in it's almost gonna sound vain, but I really see myself as a much powerful, more impressive. I'm showing up in the world with way more confidence right now. It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, that's great. So those
Yeah.
those kind of things. There's a page in your workbook called my acknowledging list, and so that's where those ideas go. Because when I was first putting this program together years ago, right? when I first had this idea about, your mind is a time machine, and the way to think about your mind is that your mind moves through time, or there's a part of your mind that moves through time, which I call your inner awareness or your inner attention, right? And that time is kind of a field that this inner awareness can move around in, the same as your body moves around in space. So I used to do a lot of hiking back then. I had a cabin up on the top of Grouse Mountain, and I spent a lot of time there, and I used to hike around, And so a lot of the analogies and things that I have put into this program and into my book too, came from that sort of comparing moving through time and moving through space. What is it like, right? And so to me, the analogies are, pretty well 100% accurate, right? And so one of the things is that, for example, when I was hiking in the mountains, you get to the top of a little rise, and you can look in the distance and you can see something. So, okay, well, I'll walk and I'll go over there, right? So there's your goal. And you're motivated because, you're enjoying the scenery and stuff like that. But then at a certain point, you might find yourself going down into this valley, and then you end up, stuck in a stream or something, or there's maybe a bunch of rocks and things blocking your way. And you might get the thought, well, do I really want to continue this? It's such a drag, So you sort of lose perspective, you lose your motivation, you lose sight of your goal, and you might get all these ideas of maybe I should pack it in, I don't want to hurt myself, whatever, So it's in those times that you need to say, no, I want to do this, and I can do this, and I'll just have to be careful getting over these rocks and fallen trees and things. So, and then after a little while, you're back up on another little rise, and you can see again, oh, hey, now I can see more, So that idea of kind of going in and out of your thinking and your awareness and your motivation is, to me, it was a very valuable metaphor, right? So the idea of this acknowledging list then is to write down, opportunities are coming to me, and you can write the person's name down that you mentioned to me a little while ago, that's starting this new source of income for yourself and this new project. And, so when you're in the valley and you're kind of having those low times, like, hey, do I really want to do this? Is this worthwhile? You can read that acknowledging list and you can go, hey, wow, I forgot, that since I started this program, I've gained this and this and this and this, and I've noticed this shift, and it pumps you up and gives you some motivation. So that's great. Yeah, that's great. So I'm glad that you're noticing these gains, right? Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about too much, but it's a part of this program, and you just mentioned it, I think, a minute ago, is the law of attraction, right? And so the way that I understand the law of attraction is that when you think about something and you imprint it into your consciousness, you become more aware of it, right? You start to notice more of it around. I used the analogy in one of our past sessions about learning Chinese, right? So I learned to speak Chinese. My Chinese is not very good, really, but I can get by. I mean, if I had to go to China today by myself, I could get around, So, and well, before, when I used to be in a restaurant and I heard a bunch of people speaking Chinese behind me, it was just background noise. But now, if that happens, I can understand what they're saying, And so that is, in a sense, that's the law of attraction happening. It's like me being aware of something that before I wasn't aware of, right? And so getting new ideas, meeting new people, having new opportunities come to you, that's how the law of attraction works. And it works in one way that we've talked a lot about, which to me is maybe the most important way, at least as far as this process that we're talking about now, and that is feelings, right? Because I started this meditation exercise, as I mentioned years ago, because I noticed one day that I didn't have very many positive feelings, When I thought about my past, it was mostly negative feelings that came up. So I spent time, in a sense, looking in the past, and I finally remembered, baseball, right? Well, that positive feeling then led me to remember a whole bunch of other positive feelings that happened in that year and in my childhood. And then I remembered later, the yo-yo contest, right? And then I remembered, getting that great job that I applied for at the Banff Springs golf course, where I had to just walk around the Banff Springs golf course for 8 hours a day and getting paid for it, right? Plus a free room because I was working, for the Banff Springs Hotel. So, it's like that one feeling led to another feeling, reminded me of another feeling, and that analogy of the tuning forks, where you click one and then it vibrates, and then the other one that's in sync with it, that vibrates. To me, that's the law of attraction, right? And so what happens is, first of all, you remember feelings, you remember ideas, you remember opportunities, and you will start to attract, opportunities and things to you. Now, the opportunities probably were always there, but you didn't notice them because you weren't in that space where you were confident enough to recognize it, right? Or at least to take action on it, So the law of attraction is an essential part of this whole neuroplasticity process of changing your brain, changing your thinking that we're involved in now, right? So I was invited a few years ago to do a workshop, a half-a-day workshop for one of the First Nations groups here in Victoria. And so I did this workshop. There was about 15 or 20 women there in this workshop. And so I'm going through the idea, your past is still there, your mind is a time machine, and we're starting to work on this past successes list, right? So write down 2 or 3 things that make you feel good, that were positive, that you would call a past success, right? So I'm going around the room and I'm looking at these people and they're writing in their little workbook, And this one lady, she's just staring off into space, right? So I said, hey, Margaret, how about writing something in your past successes list, So she says, I don't have any successes. I said, really, nothing? No, I've never done anything that was successful, right? So I said, okay. So I started working with her for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, trying to get her to think of something. And I said, is there anything that makes you feel good? She said, no. Anything that makes you feel positive? No. Anything that you would call a success? No. Anything that makes you feel proud? So she went, well, I'm proud of my kids. So I said, oh, great, okay, well, write that down. You're proud of your kids, right? So I said, why are you proud of your kids? She says, well, I'm a good mom. I love cooking for them. I love getting them dressed in the morning, sending them off to school. And I love the fact that they're happy and they're healthy. And so I said, okay, that's a success, right? You're a successful mom. So she says, yeah. So she wrote down, I'm a successful mom, And her energy immediately shifted, right? Well, the workshop went on, for I think 4 hours or 5 hours. And then I got a phone call about 2 weeks later from the person who had invited me to come and do this workshop. And she said, Margaret has changed like night and day. She's a totally different person now after your workshop. She said the reason she went to the workshop is because I told her I'd pay her $100 if she showed up. I didn't tell you that at the time, but she said that's the only way I could get her out of her house because she hadn't left her house in 2 years. She was so depressed and so bummed out, she didn't participate in any of the community activities, all the classes and the different things that we have going on. She would never come, right? And she said after that workshop now, she's coming out, she's meeting people, she's coming to our singing group, and she's coming to the cooking class, and she's like a totally different person, right? So I thought, wow, that's powerful, and that's what can happen with this simple idea of connecting with a past that has some positive energy for you, and then shifting your feelings and shifting your self-image around that. So she went from I'm a loser, I have no successes in my life, to being I'm a good mom, I'm proud of my kids, I feel good about that, and everything shifted, right? So it's powerful stuff. And every past success that you find is a source of power for you. It's still there. It's like I used to live in Montreal. Well, Montreal's still there. It's not in my physical reality at the moment, right? Like I look out the window, I live in Victoria now, so I look out the window, there's no Montreal here. But Montreal still exists, it's still there. And if I were to phone somebody in Montreal, some of the information from Montreal comes into my present reality. If I ask somebody, hey, what's happening outside your window right now? They could look out the window and they could describe the traffic and the weather and whatever. So information from Montreal is coming into my present, right? Well, that's what the past successes list can do when you look at it in the context of my mind is a time machine. It's able to channel this positive energy through my imagination into the present, right? And repetition, of course, then it sticks and it shifts the neurons in your brain, and your reality shifts. So we were talking last week about a paradigm shift, right? And this is what we're doing in this program. We're giving people a different paradigm to look at themselves and look at their mind and look at their imagination. And so before about 1995, all the scientists in the world, they considered thinking to be what's called an epiphenomenon, right? Now, an epiphenomenon is something that only exists because something else exists. So think of a tree. The sun shines on the tree, leaves a shadow on the ground. Well, the shadow is an epiphenomenon. It's only there because the tree's there. No tree, no shadow, right? So the idea that you could change the tree by moving the shadow is ludicrous, makes no sense, right? Doesn't fit the paradigm. Well, that's what scientists used to think when people mentioned, like I mentioned last week, the Dalai Lama. He presented them with this idea that he thought that the meditation exercises that the yogis were doing and the Buddhist monks that he was working with were actually changing their brains, that their brains were different now. Well, they said, come on, you're out of your mind, It's like, oh, you can move the shadow and that changes the tree. Well, when they started using the functional MRI and actually looking at the brain as it was thinking, they were shocked to realize, hey, it's true. You can actually make changes in your brain by thinking in a certain way. And the certain way is what we're doing in this program, where we're writing things down, we're thinking about them, we're saying, how does that work? What does it mean? And we're getting the idea that our thoughts are real forces, that by changing our thinking, we can have physical, tangible changes in our lives. And of course, the first change we're going to notice is the feeling change. And then with a little bit of time, meditating or doing these visualization exercises morning and evening and thinking of the past successes list, that over time, that whole emotional pattern in our mind brain system, mind brain and body, it's going to have an effect, like Margaret, after that workshop. So incredible shifts are possible, and they just keep building as people get more into this way of looking at reality. So all of those positive things in your past, they're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. Montreal's still there, right? That baseball game, for me, it's still there. And that yo-yo contest is still there. Like anytime I want to feel successful and lucky and like I'm a winner, boom, I know where that feeling exists for me, right? So that's what I mean about your mind being your imagination is a pipeline, and you can literally channel that positive energy. So, comments from Jessica?
No, I mean nothing specific. I'm just like I'm soaking it all in. Like this is the thing is what I'm loving so much about this is that like every time you speak and we do one of these, it's like I learn new things, like little light bulbs just keep going off. It's like I've opened a pathway in my mind where I'm like just more open, right? And I'm like hearing things differently, and it's landing differently, right? Like I said, I've been studying self-improvement, self-development, NLP, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like all these things for years, and I get it. Like I get how it works and the whole bit, but like it's not. I get how it works, but now I feel it working. Like it's a huge difference, right? So
right.
Yeah, and again, I just learned a whole new word, like this whole epiphenomenon, whatever thing you call it, right? Like
epiphenomenon, yeah, that's a word that I learned when I was
shifting.
Yeah, that's
you're just completely shifting inside of my head right now.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right, because you've made this shift, you see, from thinking of your thoughts being basically like the weather, it's just there, you can't do anything about it, to being all of a sudden, wow, my thoughts are real forces, right? And this idea that your mind is a time machine, which you said, I think it was last week or the week before, you said, when you first heard that idea, you thought, what's up with this guy, But now the scientists are talking about it too. And like I said, if you do a Google search for mental time travel, there's hundreds of millions of references to it, right? So it's the new way of understanding the mind, right? People used to think of the mind like a library because that's the only analogy they had, right? And then 100 years ago or so, people started thinking about the mind. Oh, the mind's kind of like a radio set or like a recorder, right? And then, the mind's like a computer, right? Oh, it's got little programs in it. Well, all of those analogies are good, but to me, the best one is that your mind is a time machine, because that has so much power for us as people, because our memories and the meaning that we put on things that happen in our lives really affect us profoundly every day. So
well, I think that's the biggest shift for me right now, is that I think it's my belief. It's the belief in myself and belief in what's possible for me. That's what it's like I wake up and I hear something and I'm just like why do I feel so much differently about this now? Like that resistance that seems to have backed off. Right, and it's like I'm more open to the ideas as opposed to shutting them down right away. Like I have to say, I think that's the biggest change that I'm feeling. Is it's like my resistance to things has just been pushed farther away. So I'm not feeling it as much, and I'm open to okay, but what if? What if? Like it's a feeling. Like it's just this overall like what is new. It's like, what is going on? Why do I feel this? Like it's just really cool. Don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, well, it is a feeling, and I think feelings, I mean, Anthony Robbins, I mentioned last week, I think, he defines a belief as a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something. So a feeling of certainty is like, how much do you believe it? Oh, maybe 10%, Well, that's a feeling of certainty, right? But if you feel it 100%, then wow, you know it. It's not just a concept anymore. It's a certainty, right? It's a truth for you. And so as you and as I collect these past positive memories and also learn how to shift, which is what we're going to do with the deep dive session coming up, changing the meaning of a past event, changing what we used to think of as a negative event, changing it to a positive event, right? Or at least taking some of the sting out of it. So rather than being negative, it becomes neutral or maybe even positive. And when that happens, then a lot of magic really, really happens. Because you can ask people, and this is why I think feelings are so important, You can ask people, on a scale of 1 to 10, how successful do you feel right now? Well, everybody has an answer for that. They'll say, well, 10 or 9 or 3 or 2. If you asked Margaret in that workshop that I talked about, she probably would have said 0, But a couple of weeks later, she was like, oh, maybe 4, 5, or 6, right? So that's a big shift. I mean, when you define your life going from a 0 to a 6, that's a huge shift, right? And so these ideas are really powerful. And so changing one memory or finding one positive source of pride or success or happiness in the past is great. Finding 10 or 20 or 30 is even better, right? And so what happens, it's like, to me, I have the, kind of an image of like a teeter-totter. You get so many negatives and so many positives. Well, the thing is kind of set. It's either, it's a 4 or it's a 5 or it's a 6, whatever. Well, if you take those negative pennies and you change them to positive ones and put them on the other end, then at some point, your life is going to really shift. And so the global feeling that you have about your life and yourself and your past and your future, that changes too. Because every time you feel a little better about your past, then you feel a little better about what's possible in the future, right? When you can think of 10 or 15 things that you tried that you didn't think you could do it and you did it, and the feeling and the excitement that comes from that, and then you think of something in the future that you'd like to do, it's harder to say, well, I don't think it's going to work out, It's easier to say, hey, maybe it will work out. I did it in the past, and maybe it'll work out this time. So I'll give it a try. And that's the magic thing, is trying, taking action. So the word journal comes from the French word for day, which is jour, right? So jour, French word for day. Journal, a journal, is a newspaper, because it comes out every day. A person who works in the newspaper, he's a journalist, right? So a journal is also related to the word journey. Because you remember, you're a fan of Robin Hood, right? It used to be not too long ago, or if you like Westerns, the old Westerns, it wasn't too long ago that it was dangerous to travel. So what would happen, it happened here in BC. I mean, it happens all over the world, certainly, or at least it used to, where you would have these forts spring up, or in Europe, it might have been an inn, right? Where, you travel one day's journey and then you stay in the inn. And the reason you stayed in the inn is because it was, number one, they had food there, but number two, it was safe, right? because there were highwaymen on the road, these bad dudes who would rob you or worse, right? So they used to count things in days. Oh, it's 3 days journey, You want to go from Vancouver over the mountains to Calgary? Oh, it's a 5 days journey, right? So you travel one day and then you rest and then you travel the next day. So you travel in the daytime and you rest at night, right? Well, that's the idea of a journey. So we're on this journey right now. So this idea of, working in your journal, working in the workbook, and making small little gains day by day by day, that's the idea of a journey, right? And so when you get some positive success, like you mentioned, you're recognizing more opportunities now, right? That is one of the things that you might put on your acknowledging list that I mentioned a minute ago, because it's actually proof that you're making progress, right? When we think we're not making any progress, then we lose all our motivation. We lose, we doubt ourselves. We say, what's the point, right? There's no point here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going in a circle, right? Well, as soon as you think that you're not making progress, then you tend to just stop. You sit down and say, I'm not going to effort anymore. I'm not going to try anymore because it's not working. So it's important to remind ourselves that it's actually working. So this emotional blueprint that each of us has, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel about my social life? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel about my health? The 6 areas of your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy am I with my relationships, right? How happy am I with my finances? And you have an answer. So the idea of that pie chart, where you have the 6 areas of your life, you had one you showed me a couple of weeks ago that you filled out. When you ask yourself those questions and you have a pie chart that's really lopsided, it's pretty obvious where you should put some energy. Put your energy to building up there you go. So putting some energy into building up the low parts. So so this idea of your emotional blueprint, I think, is a good one. And that can shift. So Margaret is a perfect example of somebody who, after coming to that workshop, and not just listening to me, but doing the work, right? I said to her, write this down, write that down, write down your kids. I love my kids. I'm a good mom. I'm a good cook. I love looking after my kids. I'm proud of my kids. All of a sudden, she had something in her life that was positive, whereas before, she literally couldn't see it. So that emotional blueprint idea is to me really, really powerful. So the idea then that, a belief is a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something, our mind automatically puts a meaning on something, and it will do it automatically as from where we're coming from, right? So if we feel like a loser and we try something and it doesn't work, then we tend to go, oh, you see, I am a loser. I lost again, So we need to shift that around.
Something that I wrote down, I've been listening to your book. I've had that going the last few days when I'm getting ready in the mornings. And one of the things I wrote down this morning, and it's not verbatim, it was just the way I received what you said, but it's kind of along the lines of what you were just saying. And I said, our minds like answers, so it creates meanings with the limited information that we have. So that's kind of like what I feel like Margaret was doing, right? Is she couldn't find a meaning in her life for success because she was working with like limited information, right? Whereas what I feel like what you did for her was you expanded the information so that it allowed her to actually find new meanings. So that was like,
that's right.
Again, this is the little thing that I make these little sticky notes when I'm reading things because I want to remember them because they're like, it's important. Like, and I feel like that's what's changing for me, is I feel like because I'm being introduced to new information, it's creating new possibilities, and my mind is more open to creating new meanings for things. And
Yeah.
instead of just working with this tiny little box that I've been running with for the last 50-ish years, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, the meaning shifts. The information stays the same, or at least the data stays the same, but the information changes. So, information is data in formation, right? Like I used the example in my book about geese. They fly south, they make the shape of a V, right? So there's some data. The data is the little dots that are the birds, and they form this shape like a V that you can recognize. Oh, hey, So the data of our lives doesn't necessarily change. That baseball was always, the baseball game was always there for me, but I didn't examine it. I didn't remember it. I'd forgotten about it. And part of the reason I forgot about it was because I had, over the previous 10 or 15 years, I had formed the habit of feeling bad about my past. My emotional blueprint had shifted from 8 or 9 when I was 5 or 6 years old to maybe 2 or 3 when I finished high school. I was so bummed out. But remembering that baseball game, it shifted my emotional blueprint to the point where I was able to see things. I was able to remember some more positives. So, so your imagination is a pipeline. I can channel positive power from my past, and I can project it into the future. So your mind can receive thoughts, and it can send thoughts. Just like we send signals to this rover that's on Mars, and we say, okay, turn left, and it turns left, right? Or turn right, it turns right. So we can do that with our mind. And when you listen to the morning meditation, the morning visualization exercise, what it says is, this is the purpose of the exercise is to develop a new awareness and a new habit. And that is to decide how you're going to feel in advance, right? So if you have an important meeting coming up and you're going, I got a meeting with the boss, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this, you might feel negative about it, But if you can just close your eyes and see yourself in the meeting with the boss and having like a real positive energy around that meeting, and you see yourself coming out of the meeting going, wow, that meeting was way better than I thought it might be. I feel really good about it. That will remind you to feel good about it. And if you feel good about it, then you'll find the good things in it. So that idea that you can decide how your day is going to go in advance, to me, that's a really powerful idea. So last week I gave you an affirmation. Pardon?
I have been using this, right? This whole idea of creating my day ahead of time. And right. I have to say, it has been working. I used to have a sticky note, because I like sticky notes, that I would put in my car, and I would use it as I was driving to work, is I would think about what I had going that day, and I would imagine it going so good. Everything was so good. Everyone was friendly. Everything that I had to do worked out perfectly. All of these, and it just works. It happens that way. I don't remember having bad days on the days that I did that. So, this stuff works.
Well, what we're doing is we're becoming more conscious of our thinking, right? Like, how many times have you heard somebody say something like, if they raise the price of gas again, man, I'm going to be really pissed off? Well, what are you doing? You're doing the same thing. You're telling yourself, hey, if this happens, I'm going to feel this way. Well, why not say, if they raise the price of gas again, I'm going to laugh? works just exactly the same. I mean, it's the same thing, right? You're giving yourself an instruction. You're telling yourself how you're going to feel, but you're giving yourself a positive instruction rather than a negative one. So last week I gave you an affirmation. My thoughts are real forces. Have you been journaling on it, by the way? You said you were going to journal, which I thought was a great idea. You forgot. Well, that's okay. Just journal for a minute. You know, that idea of the 1 minute goal is great, right? Because there's no way you can tell yourself, no, I don't have time. Right? It's just a minute.
No, I've been focusing on the other thing you asked me, like, what do I want more of? So that's what I've been focusing on. So that's what I was journaling this week. So sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It was your idea to do it. But I was curious. So you can start next week. Or you can start today. So here's the affirmation for this week. My power is increasing. Or my personal power is growing. This idea of the law of growth, I love that because it's one of the natural laws, right? The law of growth. Everything's growing. I mean, the universe is expanding. So everything is expanding in it. And so when you think about my personal power is growing, my awareness is expanding, right? My confidence is increasing. Those ideas, they land really well in your mind because it's true. Like Anthony Robbins and his definition of a belief, right? It's a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something. Well, when you have an affirmation like my thoughts are real forces, and you have no examples of why that's true, then you don't believe it. But if you have 4, 5, 6 examples of why it's true, then you go, oh yeah, now it's true, right? I believe it because I have these examples. So then when you say my personal power is increasing, my awareness is increasing, my confidence is increasing, then your mind goes, oh yeah, it is increasing because I can remember now. You know, last week I thought this and this week I've noticed this. So this idea of increasing, you know, what do you want more of? What do you have more of now than you didn't have in the past? That's a really powerful idea, I find, to use affirmations that have that growth aspect, right? I am more confident now. I am more aware now. That's a powerful affirmation. So that's the affirmation for this week. My personal power is increasing.
Okay, I put it on a sticky note.
There you go. It's on the sticky.
It's on the sticky. It happens in my world.
If it's on the sticky, it's real.
Yes, there you go. This is how I increase my belief.
There you go.
There.
Yeah. Your belief will grow, right? You know, I mean, which is exactly what happens in a negative belief, right? Something bad happens and you go, oh, I'm a loser. I can't do that. Then you try it again. It doesn't work. Oh, I can't do it. See, I knew I couldn't do it, and now I just proved it to myself. So then later on, you know, somebody says, do you want to try this? And you go, no, it never works for me. It's because it's true for you, right? You know, when I was about, I guess I was 6 years old or 7 years old or something. I lived in Nova Scotia near the ocean. And I've always loved the ocean. That's why I live near the ocean now. I can see the ocean out of my window. And so one day I was in this lake and I was swimming, or at least bathing, you know, paddling around. And I was walking out in this lake, and all of a sudden the bottom of the lake disappeared, right? I was on some kind of a little cliff and I didn't realize it. And I went under, right? And I was down in the water, couldn't swim. But I had seen my brother about an hour before. I'd seen him swimming, right? He was doing the breaststroke, you know. So I thought, well, I better do that. So I started as fast as I could, you know, paddling like this. And I popped up into the surface and scrambled back to the shore. And then the next couple of days, I said to my friend Roger, you know, hey, can you teach me how to swim? Because I didn't want that to happen again, you know. So I remember very clearly now, Roger taught me how to swim, right? He said, okay, let's go to the beach. So we went to the beach, and I learned how to swim. So I love swimming now, right? Well, my brother, when he was in grade 2 or 3, somebody pushed him into the deep end of the swimming pool, and it freaked him out so much, he became afraid of the water. He's never learned to swim to this day. Not to say there's anything wrong with my brother. He's a great guy. But he just doesn't swim, Whereas I swim. I like it. So, another past success. Okay, so we're getting close to the time now. So I think maybe it's time to wrap it up. I'm thrilled that you are noticing some benefits from this, because that's going to mean a lot to people, that you can say, yes, I'm noticing some progress, things are happening for me. So that's a powerful affirmation that this process is really working.
Yeah, it's really working. It's kind of crazy because I guess I'm doing the work, but it's not like it's intense work, it's not, I don't feel like the amount of effort that I'm putting in is equal to what I'm getting out of it. Like it's way out of balance. Like I'm not having to do that much, but yet I feel like so much is coming back to me, right? It's really cool.
Yeah, well, you're noticing all the stuff that we've talked about, right? Your brain's starting to change, your perception is changing, you're noticing different things now, and what you notice is changing, right? So when you saw an opportunity before, you might have thought, oh, there's a challenge there. I'm not sure if I can do that. Whereas now you're more likely to go, hey, there's an opportunity that could be a big benefit to me. I'll let it in, right? I'll open my mind and let it in. So thanks very much. Thanks very much for all this, Jessica. And
oh my God, thank you. You are changing my life. It's amazing.
There you go. That's what I do.
Well, you do it well.
Okay. Well, thanks very much.
We will next Saturday morning, 10 a.m. PST. We are back.
Great.